Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Hassan's. If you have not already subscribed, can you please hit that subscribe button? And if you have already subscribed, thank you for the support. So this weekend we get another circus show from none other than Jake Paul. This time fighting one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time. And this guy's a certified GOAT, one of the greatest to ever do it. Anderson the Spider Silva enters the boxing ring against Jake Paul. Get to the tail of the tape. You got Jake Paul, who, is a little bit undersized in this fight against Anderson Silva. The only thing Jake Paul has going for him in this fight is his youth. That's it. Everything else, footwork, speed, boxing ability, knockout power, everything is Anderson Silva. But what about Jake Paul? He's knocking everyone out, right? A guy knocking out, Nate Robinson and Ben Askren, who is just one of the worst strikers of all time. There's a little something going on with that fight. I'll get to that in a second. And so on and so forth. You got Tyron Woodley, who had knockout ability, but his output was never anything. His footwork was never anything. His elusiveness was never anything. We can't compare those guys to a certified GOAT like Anderson Silva, Anderson Silva has entered the boxing ring before. He beat a guy like Chavez Jr., who obviously we know is not a great middleweight or a great fighter at that, but a legitimate boxer. Anderson Silva has 2 fights under his belt and he's beaten 2 boxers. Jake Paul has yet to do that. And when Eddie Hearn is the promoter for Matchroom Boxing, offered Jake Paul one of these fighters and offered him a good amount of money to do so, the same type of money that he would get fighting, an Anderson Silva or a Tyron Woodley or maybe even more. And Jake Paul turned it down. And this is a guy who was, I believe, 2-0 or something like that. He was at the start of his career. Eddie Hearn was trying to prove a point and say, hey, Jake, you're not a legitimate boxer. You might be doing these circus shows, pulling some numbers streaming-wise and all of these things, but you're not a legitimate boxer. And everyone knows that. Everyone who knows anything about the sport knows that. Going back to the Ben Askren thing, you have a circus, right? You could never rule out something being written in a circus fight. Maybe you write into the contract that the fighter has to lose, right? You never know. Maybe the fighter has to lose. I only say that because Ben Askren tweeted out before the fight how this is a circus, enjoy the show. It was kind of a weird tweet right before a fight. It was almost like he was just saying like, hey, you got to do some things for money, as if he's going into a WWE ring or something. I only say that because Ben Askren is an awful striker, horrible. But he has taken knees, he has taken elbows, he has taken legitimate punches from, great fighters throughout his career. He's not a guy to easily put away. He took an absolute beating against Robbie Lawler in their fight. All of a sudden, he took a simple punch from Jake Paul and he's wobbly and, off balance and falling apart. It just kind of looks shady. Tyron Woodley, you look at Tyron Woodley and it's like the guy literally had Jake Paul hurt on the ropes and then decides to back up. Just a little bit shady, that's all I'm saying, In my opinion, this fight should only go one way. I just see Anderson Silva hands down being elusive, controlling the ring, and putting Jake Paul away. If it goes anything other than that, especially if I see Jake Paul starching Anderson Silva, come on, man. Enough's enough. At that point, it's like, hey, what kind of contract is this? I have an NDA going on here where they can't talk about, that fight afterwards. There's absolutely no way Jake Paul can beat Anderson Silva. I don't care if Anderson Silva is 55 years old, let alone 47. He is one of the greatest fighters of all time, one of the greatest strikers of all time. The elusiveness, and it's still there. The fact that he's able to beat a guy like Chavez Jr., it's still there. He still got it. And so it's not like he did that a year ago and then all of a sudden he gets in there with Jake Paul and Jake Paul overwhelms him and knocks him out. That should tell you something at that point. Oh, I'm not gonna lie, at that point, it would be wild because I'm like, Anderson Silva doesn't need the money. He doesn't need the fame. It would be pretty wild for me to believe that Anderson Silva would sign off on something that has him, losing and an NDA where it's like he can't talk about it or anything like that. In other words, join a circus, And so I just expect Anderson Silva to control the ring. Stop Jake Paul. That's it. That's it. When you look at Jake Paul, he can box. I'm not saying that. Jake Paul actually, like, when he faces other guys that are not boxers and not elite fighters or anything like that, he can box and he can beat guys. If he faces off against, you're talking about like these guys like KSI or, even Tyron Woodley and Ben Askren even. I'm saying there's some shadiness to those fights, but it's not hard to believe that Jake Paul did knock out Tyron Woodley. It's not hard to believe Jake Paul did knock out, Ben Askren. He did knock out Nate Robinson. None of these guys are actual boxers. None of these guys are elite strikers, elusiveness, great footwork, none of that. Anderson Silva, when he took up MMA, if he would have became a boxer, in my opinion, and I believe in the opinion of many fighters, many analysts, many experts, would have been a Hall of Fame boxer. 100%. That's how great of a fighter Anderson Silva is. Let me know what you guys think. Comment, like, subscribe. Peace.